Lab 3 is going to be a little, couple things, a few things are going to be different in here. So we need to make sure it's published to GitHub pages. And to get any credit for this, you're going to have this as a live site, not just checking in the code. You have to have the code checked in and a live site. And this is different in that when we're going to be using a module, a node module that will actually deploy your application, because when we're using React, you know how we create those JSX files, we create a bunch of different files. Well, the browser doesn't know what to do with those. Okay, so that's one of the main features of Vite. The VITE. The main features of that is it's a build tool, and what it will do, it's going to take your code and it's going to create something that the browser understands. It's going to create an index.html file. It's going to create a CSS file, and it's going to put all your JavaScript together in another file. Okay, and you're going to basically have those files deploy. And what you'll do is these will be deployed. We're going to use this GH pages module, and this will get deployed to your public repository. Okay, but then also besides that, you're also going to have to commit your main code, right? The JSX files, everything else you created. We're going to also want to go ahead and commit that as well. So we're going to go through how to do all that. Okay. So let's go ahead and, I'll do a quick little more here. So basically we're going to create this application, to get any, it needs to be in a working state. It has to be on GitHub pages live for you to get any credit. Okay, so there's 3 interview questions that are already there within the code, but you're going to want to create 7 more, and this is 7 more React questions. Okay, this is kind of a quiz type thing. Kind of an interview questions, whatever, or quiz, however you want to look at it. Okay, you will also, besides what's in the code here, you're going to go ahead and add a little more customization to this. And also you're going to have to create your own header and footer components. Okay. Let's see here. Basic knowledge. Okay. I don't think there's anything right now I want to go over. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started on this. I'm not actually going to cut and paste each thing on here, but I'm going to start this. Okay, I'm going to start this, and then I'm going to. I already went through this to make sure it still works. This is something I introduced in the summer course, the summer HTML course, and I just wanted to make sure everything worked. But I added some things in here, and I'll show you what I added. So the first thing we want to do here is go ahead and create a public repository called React Quiz. So yeah, I'm gonna just grab this. So so you want to make sure you go out to your repository. You click over here. You select your repositories. Just kind of the review. I know you guys already did this, right? Then we're going to go ahead and create a new repository. And here I need to select mine because I have something different. And repository name, I'm going to use React Quiz 2025. Okay. Make sure it's public. Choose a license. Just go ahead and choose MIT license. And that's about it. And we just create the repository. Okay, so now we got a repository. So what we want to go ahead and do here, we want to copy this. Okay, and then what is going to be a little different here, and you don't have. Let me just mention this. You don't have to do it this way. I'm going to, for this assignment, I'm going to use the command line stuff to clone your repository for us to check in our code. We're just going to use all the command line arguments as opposed to using GitHub Desktop. Okay. It's not too complicated. Once you get in the habit of doing it, you'll probably prefer it. But if you do really want to use GitHub Desktop, just like you've done for the other assignments for this, that's fine. You can do that. Okay. You can do that for your code itself, but for the deployment, okay, for the deployment, the kind of the Vite deployment, you're still going to have to do some command line stuff. But for the regular code, you can go ahead and use GitHub Desktop if you want. I think it'd be a good idea for you to learn how to do the command line stuff. And so I'm going to go ahead and go through that. Okay. And go ahead, and if you're going to go ahead and do that, I would close GitHub Desktop down. I wouldn't have it open. And the reason for that, it kind of, the same things you're going to be doing the command line, it kind of, GitHub Desktop shares stuff. And sometimes for this assignment, it's probably not a big deal. But if you're working on different branches and doing different things, it can kind of get a little confusing between the two because it'll switch. It'll switch in GitHub Desktop even though you're doing something command line. And for, like I said, for this one, it's probably not a big deal, but I would still do it anyway. I go ahead and close GitHub Desktop. So we're going to go ahead and create a public repository, right? We already did that. And we're going to clone it using the command line. So what we wanted to go ahead and do here, the best way, and here, first, I want to mention this. This is very important. So when we do this deployment of the application, when we do this deployment, and I'm not just talking about checking in your code to the repository, we're actually going to be deploying the application using Vite, using that module, the GH Pages module. And for when you do that, if you've got a very long if you use a very long file path, and actually when I went ahead and went through this assignment again, just to make sure everything worked, I ended up having, and I forgot all about it, that you cannot have a real long file path because it just causes problems when you try to deploy it. Okay. So I went ahead and created, like a directory this close just on my C drive dev. You can do it however you want, and it can be a little longer than this, but I would make sure that you don't have a real long directory structure before you start your repository. Okay, so I have it just cdev. Then there I have a folder here called repos, right, for short for repositories, and so I'm going to go and I'm going to create it in here. Okay, so the easiest way to do this, especially using Windows, just come in here and open in Terminal. Okay. So this will make sure that you're all, from the beginning, you're in the correct directory. Okay. The other way, real quick, is you can also do just, your start menu and type in command in the start menu. So it'll bring up a command prompt. If you do this, though, you need to make sure that you you need to go to the right directory. And in this case, you'd have to go cd dev and then cd repos here, okay, to get started. Then you could run the command. But I'm just going to go ahead. It's simpler here. But this is actually a different kind of terminal. The command line terminal is different than what's going to get created here. And it depends on what version of Windows maybe you have and everything else. I've kind of forgotten older versions, but I have Windows 11. So for repos here, I'm going to right click on here and I'm going to go open in Terminal. And as you can see, it actually opened a Windows PowerShell. And it's just kind of a different kind of a terminal than command line or the command prompt one. But don't worry about that. It's not a big deal. But now I'm into this. So I want to go ahead and clone my repository, right? So instead of using GitHub Desktop, I'm going to do a clone here. So I'm going to do git clone. And then I'm just going to paste. I still have that. So you want to make sure that you have this correct. Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and clone that. Hit the enter key. and it went ahead and grabbed it remotely. It went ahead and cloned it. Okay, there's not much in there, but it went ahead and created that. Okay, now all the other commands that we're going to enter, we'll do that right in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so let's go ahead and close that, and now we come in here to repos. I already had a couple other ones in here, so you can just kind of ignore that. And then come in here and right click on this, or however you do it. So open up your repository that we just created, and then go ahead and open this in Visual Studio Code. All right. So all we really have here is the license, right? And then we can go ahead and go to a new terminal. And let's go back and look at our assignment here. Okay. So we went ahead and cloned our repository. So we did that. Open your terminal. Yeah, so here I shouldn't do this. I'll move this later. But if you're going to use GitHub Desktop, you don't do this clone, okay? I mean, you can, and it'll actually be in there later on if you don't want to do other commands, but I would suggest you're going to do the command line, stick with the command line. If you're going to do GitHub Desktop, stick with GitHub Desktop, okay? So we're going to create a new project using Vite. So I'm going to copy this. And then in here, you want to use the arrow keys and select React, and then come down here and select JavaScript. So I think the first one, I know a couple of students asked me because it wasn't work. I used it like a template thing, and for some reason it worked fine on mine. Maybe my version's a little older, what I have. It worked fine, but it seemed like some of the maybe newer version of React of Node, I should say, worked a little different. So I don't know what was going on there, but this it may show this, it may not. Most likely it will. So you just want to make sure you choose these. First React, and then JavaScript, then hit the Enter key, and you're good, all right? And then here, the next thing we want to go ahead and do is we've now got the React Quiz app. We just want to go ahead and CD to that. And then you could always hit tab when you're doing things like that. Let me just go backwards once. CD, and then you start, and I hit tab there, okay? And that's going to put the rest in there, a little completion. So then we do that, and then we're going to go ahead and do npm install here. It's going to okay, and then in our app, Vite did all its stuff it does. You have your node modules, everything else, okay? And what I'm going to do here, instead of cutting and pasting all this, but obviously you're going to come in here under your source directory and create a components directory, add your components, and the lab has the components, the code for the components for the question, option, and score already there. You just cut and paste and put that in there, okay? But you're going to have to create the header and footer yourself, okay? Now, I suggest that you go ahead and, before you do a lot of customization, when you're doing all the cut and pasting, the important thing, make sure you save the files. Sometimes I forget to do that. So, make sure that you kind of get it working, the first pass. Same with the React Lab 2 and 3. Just get it working, cut and paste everything, get it working. Then go back and make any changes, any customizations, or other requirements. And in this case, you also, besides just adding customization and adding new questions, you also are going to want to, header, footer, the questions, and other styling, right? all of those. But I'd get it working first, okay? So what I'm going to actually do here is, because I kind of already did the base one here. I've already did this, and I'm not going to sit there and cut and paste each one of these in there. No reason to do that. So I'm going to go ahead. I already have it. So I'm going to go ahead and real quick here, I'm just going to copy and paste it in here. Actually, I think I'm going to close this to make sure. So bear with me for a minute on this. So I just copied everything in here, just basically all the things that are part of that lab assignment, except I did not create a header and footer, so that's something you'll do yourself. Real quick here, I'm just going to see this run, make sure this is going to run okay. Let's look at our package.json, make sure I do the right one. So yeah, we just do npm run dev. So we can do npm run dev. And why is that complaining? No such file or directory. Okay. Yeah, it's easy to make these mistakes. I do that. Everyone does this at times. So, what you need to do, make sure you're in the right folder, right? So always make sure you're in the right folder there. And then from there, I want to go ahead and do the npm run dev. Are they installed? Oh, yep. The bad thing with me not really following along here. So there's another there is another module here. It's npm install prop types. So we're going to run that. Okay, now this is going to work. So sorry for the confusion there. And then I'm going to bring this up in localhost just to see if it works. And it does. So what is the purpose of a useState? useState is to manage the state of a functional component. JSX stands for JavaScript XML, and then use effect. Okay, so you restart the quiz. Now here, like I said, you're going to want to go ahead and customize this. You want to put a header, a footer. You can put a progress bar. That'd be nice. If you want to save it to local storage, that'd be nice as well. However you want to customize it, okay? You are going to get some points for customization. Okay, so once you have that done, and actually you don't have to wait until you have everything done, but once you get a working app done, I would go ahead and get it deployed, okay? I'd get it deployed. So here I want to go ahead and hit Control-C, hit yes here to stop it, okay? Yeah, always remember you CLS to clear your screen, your terminal screen there. All right, so now we have that. Let's see here. Okay, so for submitting, so what we're going to do here is we're going to use a module called GH Pages. Okay, and what this will do. Let's go ahead and install that. Okay, and then now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make some other changes here. So first we'll want to change the vite.config file. And then here we will need to add base. So we right here after plugins, it's already got a comma on this line. We need to add base colon. You want to put a space there, Put your single tick there, or single quotation mark, and then we want to put in React, basically the name of our repository, quiz 2025. Okay, just like that. Okay, save that. Control S to save that. Then we come over here to package.json file. And here, let's just go ahead and put this after build. It doesn't matter, you can put after preview, but I like to keep things kind of together that are kind of related. So here we're going to do a deploy. Okay, so let's see here. I just want to make sure I get this right. Yeah, okay. So we need to put a deploy here. And a colon. And then here we're wanting to do GH pages, just like this. And -D is for directory. Okay. And so what happens here is we're actually going to be deploying a certain directory called dist, D-I-S-T. And this dist directory stands for distribution. It's kind of a general term in software development. Will be created using this Vite build. Vite build will create this dist directory. Okay, so we did that. So and then our next thing is, also make sure that you got a comma here. If anytime you're in here, you're updating something and something's red, it's going to be a problem. You'll have problems even at running everything else. So make sure there's never anything red in there. So the reason it's red is because we're missing a comma there. Right? So save there. And then after this, so this was scripts. This is a group of scripts. We have a new deploy script. Under here, we want to add what's called a home page. And this is just required by GH pages. So we're going to do home page. Okay. And then here, let's see. Nope, don't want to want this be after, right? And then here, let me just go grab it. Basically, the directory path of your repository, right? And in my case, this is Jim K Developer. Yours is going to be your username, right? Your username. Basically, if you just go to repository, you just create it. You go to the browser of the repository, it's going to be right up there in the window, right? So here, let's just go take a look real quick. So basically, this path right here, right, for our React Quiz 2025 repository, you just grab that, right? Okay, so we got that. And then after this, we have a red here, so we're missing something, right? Same thing, you have to have that comma. So we got home page, it looks good. All right, so three changes, 2 in this package.json file. You need to have your deploy and your home page. And then in your vite.config file, you need to have this base like this, okay? All right, so we have that now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run that build command. We're going to run this build command. And this build command is going to create this new directory called dist, right? It's going to create this new directory called dist. So we want to do npm run, and we want to do build. And let's see what went wrong there. Yep, I'm missing a module. We have this module called prop types that's being used. Prop types is being used in the code, and I did not install that. Right here, this is being used in the. So whenever you get an error, you want to kind of go back to the very beginning of the error, see what it's complaining about. Some of this might not make sense, but cannot resolve the import. Usually when it cannot resolve an import means, you type something wrong or you forgot to import it. In this case, I forgot to install this, right? So I want to do npm install, and that prop types. Okay, there we go. It installed it. Now let's go ahead and do our build. npm run build. And there you go. And it created this dist directory. Now in this dist directory, it has always usually has a folder called assets. And then here you've got your JavaScript. So this is basically what it basically did was it took all your JXX files, everything else, and it went ahead and combined that all together and created this one JS file. Now some stuff in here, some of the stuff in here you didn't necessarily put, but some of it's used just by the framework itself, or it's in there because of the framework, and some of it's code that you have. Okay, and now you don't really want to ever change this, but just kind of going to take a quick look. So I'm just going to search for quiz in here, and as you can see, it has stuff to do with our quiz, right? So it has our code that we created, code that we created in our JSX files, and also a bunch of code needed just to run the app, running a React app, right? So you got your JavaScript there, you got your CSS. So this is going to put in here, mash it all together, right? And they do that to save space in that. And then also you've got your index.html file. Okay. And in addition, there's this SVG file down here, and that is actually used to here. I'm going to leave this for now, but we're going to come back and just for the heck of it to show you that you can do an additional deployment and an additional check-in of your code and everything. And sorry, I was getting a phone call there. But, back to this, here's your script. So it's basically pointing to that JavaScript file that's here, and it's pointing to the CSS file here. And then here it's just got this root, and basically it's just like we've done for the DOM exercises. It's the same concept. It's actually building this whole tree, this whole DOM structure based on things in this JavaScript file. Okay. But we're going to come in here later just so I can show you updating this again, and we're going to get rid of this. We're going to get rid of this line. Not that, it's a good idea to have an icon, but just for this exercise, we're just going to get rid of this because we don't want that icon. And we'll update the title as well. So we're going to update a couple files, but we won't do that now. But I want to show you a couple things before then. Okay. All right, so this is the dist directory and everything that's in here, and this is what we actually deploy. We're going to deploy this to the GitHub repository. And what happens is GH Pages, this module, is actually going to create its own branch just for this deployment. Okay, and so let's do that. Let's just take a quick look at our current one here, just so we can see that nothing's in here, right? We just have our license. We have one branch. This is our main branch. And we have our license, and that's all we have at this point, right? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and run. We've already done our build. So the next thing we want to do, and I'm just going to use up arrows because I already had it. We're going to do this npm run deploy. Okay. So you'll need to type this in, npm run deploy, hit enter. And it's very quick. Vite's a lot quicker than it used to be. And it's already published out there. Okay. Now, even though it's published, sometimes there's still a little bit of a delayed factor in the page actually being viewable. But let's go ahead and see where we're at with that. So let me come back to the browser window. And in here, we'll have to refresh this. We still see we just have our main branch. Well, I'm going to refresh this. You're going to see it's going to change this to 2. So you're going to have 2 branches here. So now you have 2 branches here. Here your main branch. So So that's going to be the thing that we're going to do second. We haven't really committed our code. We just deployed our application, but we didn't save our code. We didn't save our JSX files and all that. That's going to be separate. That we're going to commit that to main, right? But let's go ahead and first look at our other branch here, which is GH Pages. And if we click on that, here's everything that was in the dist directory. And if on the right hand side, we come over here at deployments, click on that, and click on this. And here's our app. Let's go through it, make sure everything works. JavaScript for XML, and that's for use effect. Okay. But this is just the bare bones thing. You know, for this assignment, you need to have a header. You need to have a footer. You need to add some more customization. If you'd like to add a progress bar, that'd be nice. If you wanted to also do the, maybe a little more complex with React, and actually the React, the final project does the local storage stuff. So, you know, you might just want to, you don't have to necessarily do the local storage stuff, but you know, you could do a progress bar and that for this. And like I said, this just has 3 questions. But for this assignment, you need to come up with 7. Okay. I know it's kind of maybe a little silly. You're going to have to come up with your own fake answers, right? Incorrect answers. You know, just an opportunity for you to learn a little bit and come up with some content, I guess. But here we're going to want to do here, we're not going to do this right away. Here, first we're going to go ahead and get all of our code, all of our source code out here on the main. And then after we do that, I'm going to show you, we're going to update this. We're going to update this, and we'll see this change as well. We're going to get rid of our icon here, and we're going to change the name of this, okay, the title. So for right now, let's come back over here, and let's go back to main branch. We don't have anything in here. So this is how we go ahead and get our source code. So we're going to use just the command line instead of using GitHub Desktop. So let's come back over here, and we can do CLS just to clear our screen. Okay. And let's take a look at the commands we're going to put real quick. So what we're going to do here, it's always good to use git status just to see. It'll show you what branch you're on. Sometimes for what we're doing, it shouldn't be a big deal, but sometimes you're doing some things on different branches. Imagine, like, you know, we did the GitHub, the Git merge assignment last week, the branch and merge stuff. And if you were doing something like that, you want to make sure that you are on the right branch when you do certain things, right? You don't want to be committing things on the wrong branch, right? So git status would tell you the git status of that at that point in time. And, you know, it'll tell you like you're on the main branch, and then also it'll give you other information. You run the git status after you do other things as well, and we'll take a look at that. But we're going to run git status, make sure we're on main. Then we're going to add our changed files to what's called a staging area. Now this is something that's a little different than what we do in GitHub Desktop. We definitely, you know, we don't add. GitHub Desktop kind of does that on its own under the hood, right? But when you do command line stuff, you'll have to manually do this, run this command, and then we do a commit, and then we're going to do a push. Okay, so let's go to the command line, and here let's just do git status, and your branch is up to date with the origin main. Okay, but that doesn't mean that there's not files, untracked files. It's basically saying there's untracked files. Okay, focus and explore. Okay, I haven't never looked at this from that. Yeah, oh, it's just showing you the explorer. But yeah, so obviously there's stuff that's changed here in our local that we never did deploy, right? So Git's always tracking what's changed, okay? But it's telling you Nothing added to commit, but untracked files present. So it's saying there's untracked files. Basically, all this stuff, right? Use git add to track. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do git add, and we're going to use a dot, right? A period. And so what this means is just add everything from the root directory, right? It's going to add these in there. And what this does is adds it to what's kind of called a staging area. So it adds it to staging, and then from there we'll go ahead and run the next command, which is commit. But we'll do a git status just to take a look. So we did that add. Sometimes you'll get some warnings, and that's okay. You don't need to worry about this. And then so here, and then what we're going to want to go ahead and do here, yeah, let's run git status. You can always use the up arrow keys if you want to get the things. So here's all the files that were added. Okay. Now, one thing it's not going to do, okay, there is this git ignore, okay, and this git ignoring a bunch of things, and you don't have to worry. Vite kind of sets this all up for you, so that you don't need to submit your node modules, right? Because we can always get once something is committed to the repository, we can always get that, clone that from there, get that back out, run npm install, and it will rebuild this based on our package JSON files, right? Based on everything in here, all of our dependencies, it will recreate this. So you don't need to check in your node modules, right? Now, I know there's a lot of things in here, and it's basically because sometimes you might have a VS Code. It has a lot. You don't need to worry about it. But the big things for us, we don't really want checked in, is we don't want no model checked in. We don't want dist checked in either, okay? So for right now, this was just an add. And it's going to tell you if you want to restore this. Currently it's stage. If you want to restore these, okay, you can do this git.restore, and then it will go back to the way it was, okay. But we've got these, so now these are in staging. When we commit, it's going to commit all these files, okay. Now we could have, for that add, when we did this add. And there may be some certain circumstances where, for some reason, you want to add one file, but you don't want to add all the files. Okay, there's maybe some different reasons. You're working on multiple things, and you need to add one file, but not multiple files. You can always, instead of doing that, you just name the file here, whatever the file name is, right? Okay. All right. So next, we want to go ahead and do. I think I'll just copy this since I got this right over here. So here I'm just doing commit. This is a commit, git commit. -M stands for message, and I'm just saying this is the initial commit. Okay, you can state whatever you want. Whatever you want here. People use different messages, but so here just -M means message. Git commit. When we submit, when I hit enter here, now this still isn't not going to be just like what we do in GitHub Desktop. It's not going to actually push them there. We have to do push as well, right? So we're going to do that. Okay. And then here's all the list of files, and we can actually run our git status. This is a good thing to run often, just so you can see what's going on. Your branch is ahead. So it's basically saying use git push to publish your local commits. So you have these local commits that are not pushed yet. So here you can just do git push. Okay. And now, if we go to our browser here, you will have to hit refresh here. It should be there. Hit refresh, and then here is all your files. Okay. So it's important for grading purposes that you, besides just deploying, you're deploying your file, you're deploying that dist directory to that GH pages branch, which Vite takes care of that under the hood, okay? It creates that branch and everything else, right? But the main's all your code, right? The main's all your code. So it's just a little different, kind of like what we did when we did a web portfolio. We used GitHub Desktop for our web portfolio. You know, we did things a little different there, where we actually, you know, and it's an easier way, you know, with just our content that we have that we use for our portfolio. It's all understood by the browser. Browser don't understand all this stuff, right? It doesn't know what to do with all these different files, right? All these JXS files. It doesn't know what to do with these. And that's why using Vite, we do the build, which creates that distribution, right? All right. So we have our two branches, one for pages, and our main, which is our all of our code base. All right. So now let's just go ahead and make a change. So what I suggest that you do is, not that you have to do it really early on, but you know, get your assignment, you know, basically for this lab 3, get this thing where it's kind of working, and then go ahead and deploy it, and also use the git commands to put that out on main, right? So the deploy stuff, that's not git commands, right? That's specific commands that GH modules use, right? So that's specific to that module, where the git commands, that's what, you know, git add, git commit, git push, them are all git commands, right? But I would get yourself, like, get that lab in a decent shape so you can go ahead and deploy it, right? And also commit your code to the main so you can see that work, okay? And then you can continue on making your changes, doing what you want. And then you can go ahead later on and push that out there again. Just remember, whenever you make a change to your code, you're going to have to deploy it again, right? You're going to have to deploy it again, and then also you're going to have to commit your code again to GitHub repository, your remote repository. All right. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do real quick here. So let's go to index.html. And even though, like I said, it's always good to have an icon, we're just not going to worry about it for this exercise. And so we get that. And then let's go ahead and change this here. Let's change this to React Quiz 2025. Okay, I'm going to save this. Okay, and then let's come back down here and let's go ahead and first we'll go ahead and push our code out to the main. It doesn't matter what order you do this. So we've changed our code here. Well, obviously you always want to test things, so I shouldn't really say that. What you really want to do here, so let me, let's do this the right way. And I do want to mention something. If for some reason you don't, sometimes it's easy to create your, start your app, I should say. Start your app, right? Do a run, get it running. And then for some reason you end up not closing this, and somewhere along the line you end up with another terminal, okay? So if you get another terminal, so if we go to the first one here, I don't know if you can see this on the right-hand side. Yeah, you should be able to. My picture's below it. So we've got this first one here. It's running in there. And then here's a new window. It's not, so you can actually hear it. Well, so here this is running on port 5173. If we go ahead and run this again. Oh, okay. It's going to go ahead and give you an error. No such file or directory open. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I was looking for something different than what it is. So here we actually are in the wrong directory. Yeah, we want to CD to the quiz app. Okay. And then, sorry about that. And that's another thing you're going to make by mistake. You're going to do this yourself. I guarantee it. I've done it a bunch of times, just did it again. So you always want to make sure that you're in the right directory to run the app. Okay. So now here, if I run this, This will start up, but as you know, but if we'll look at it, so now you actually have you have the app running twice, okay? You go to the first one here, it's running on port 5173, and this one's 5174, okay? So just to let you know that this is potentially can happen, and you can kind of get confused about some things, so just keep that in mind. So the best thing is just try to keep only one, kind of terminate it. So here we're terminated. I'm going to close that. So we're back to this one, okay? So we're good. So I went ahead and changed, we got rid of the icon and changed the title. We start our server. Let's go ahead and look at it. And so if I bring this up, as you notice up here at the top, it says React Quiz 2025. You don't see the icon. So there's your updated one. You're good. Obviously, in the real world, there's a process involved. There's other people involved that are going to verify this to make sure that the changes worked, right? Okay. So let's come back here now. And let's go ahead and close, kill our server, so to speak. All right. We can clear our screen. And now what we're going to want to head and do is, so we changed our code, right? And obviously you can see over here, it's showing you it's kind of changed, right? So here we want to go ahead and do this. This time we're just going to go ahead and push our code out there to the main branch, right? So let's go ahead and, since we have two changes here, actually, let's do this real quick. Let's do get status. So you can see add, updated will be committed. Oh, I know the other thing I was wanted to do is get rid of the icon itself. So it's only one file here that's been updated, right? So we could do get, if this was it, we can just do get add and then do the index.html, okay? And that would add it to staging, and then we would do, from there we do the commit and the push, etc. Right? But in this case, I want to get rid of something else. I don't want to be using this. Obviously, it'd be great if we had our own icon, but I'm not going to want to be using this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. Okay, I'm going to move this to recycling bin. It's gone. It's out of here. Okay, now if I do get status, it's going to show you modified the index.html, and it deleted this v, right? And obviously you should test this again, right? Just to make sure it worked, if that was ever the case. It worked before, but you always verify, right? Always verify. But now we've got this, and these are basically, these are there. They're not in staging yet, right? They're just changed. Not staged, it says not staged. So here we can go ahead and do our get add again. Get add, and then we'll just do a dot. So that's going to be basically anything that's changed, right? The only other way is go ahead and list your file, and you can list more in one file, but you can list your file there as well, right? But we're just going to do get add dot again, hit enter, and do a get status again. You can see these are staged now. If you want to do get restore, you can unstage them, but we want to go ahead and keep that. Okay, and I'm just going to use my arrow keys, and then here we're going to change the message to how about updated? Index.html. And removed icon. Okay. And we'll just go ahead and click that. And now if we do our status again, we can see the branch is ahead, and that's what it tells you. It's telling you to get push to publish your local commits. This is still just local, right? So now we're going to do the get push. Okay, and it successfully pushed them. If we come back out to our browser window, if I refresh here and then open this, you see that message right there. So there's your index.html, and it doesn't have your icon anymore. So that did that, but what it didn't do, we didn't deploy this, right? We have to deploy this again. We have to do more than just deploy it. We have to build it again, right? We have to build it again. So let's go back to our Visual Studio Code here. And we've got our dist directory here. And just real quick, let's look at the date on this. So here's our HTML file. We just can view this in Explorer. We can see 1050. So that was a while back ago. Was the last time that it was changed. Okay. So what we need to do here on this is we're going to have to come back here and do a build again. Okay. And what it'll do, it'll just overwrite what it needs to overwrite here. Okay. And it's going to get rid of this. This should disappear right here, because we deleted this from our code, but it's still in this dist directory, which is our distribution. It's going to change even if you change things here, it doesn't matter. This is going to stay this way unless you could delete this directory too, but usually that's not the best thing to do. But you can go ahead, but when we go ahead and do another build, it's going to rebuild this. Okay. So we got npm run build. Let's do that. And if you might not have seen it, it went ahead and removed that icon. And then in here, if we go ahead and view this part, you can see it updated that. And like I said, you really don't want to change anything in here. It's okay to view it, but don't get confused between that's why it's best not even to open it up too much, just because you get confused on which one you're working on, right? This is the one that's in our code base. This is the one in the dist directory. And so, you just need to be a little careful about that. Okay, so we did our build. And so then now all we need to do, we did our build. Now we can just do our deploy, right? npm run deploy. And that's going to publish that out there again. Okay, it says publish, so that's good. There might be a little bit of a delay there on that. It's pushed. I guarantee it's out there. It's just for it to reboot the server, so to speak, how it works. So we can go ahead here and then go to let me just go up one directory. Go to our GI pages, and it says now. So it showed that it created that now. You don't see our icon there anymore, right? This will happen pretty much instantaneous. Sometimes it's deployment stuff. See, it says queued, right? It's queued. So it's just a hit or miss thing on here. It could sometimes it's almost automatic. Other times it might take a few minutes. Sometimes it might take a long time. So just always keep that in mind. So you might have to be patient on that. Now it's good. And it says GitHub Pages now. I'd hit a refresh. And so here, but you have to do, it still caches things. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to hit refresh here. And I hit refresh, and you can see React Quiz 2025. So remember that whenever you bring it back up, you might want to, because the browser holds on to things. It'll hold on to stuff. And that had nothing to do with the repository. It had to do with the browser cached that, right? You had to refresh the page. So there you go. We made that change. So I suggest that's what you do for this lab. And the same thing when you're doing the final project. Get to a point where you're happy with what you have. Commit your code to main, and then also do your deployment so you can see everything's working. You're good with that. Then you come back and make some changes, get everything done. You don't necessarily have to get everything done. It's always a good idea to submit your code often to the main branch, right? Something happens on your computer, then you lose your code, right? So it's always a good idea to commit your code often. But as far as the deployment, it's nice to see that work at least once, and then you're good. Then you can go ahead and get all your changes, get all your changes done before you deploy it again, right? So that's it for the lab. And so I don't think it should be too bad. I know we're doing a couple things a little different with the some of the command line stuff for the deployment and the command line stuff for Git. But Git command lines pretty powerful. It's you get used to it after a while and kind of really like it more than using the GitHub desktop. It'd be a lot quicker. Boom, boom. You get used to it and you can get things done awful quick there. But always use that Git status lot. Make sure you're you're in the right place, in the right branch. Like I said, it's possible that you could be in the wrong one, so you want to make sure that you're committing to the correct branch. So, all right, so let's move on to the final project.